So let's start this lesson. It is the first lesson in week 7. It means next lesson is exam, midterm exam. And on the midterm exam, you will have a quiz, which is paper-based. I will give you papers. It is true-false MCQ questions. Similar to what you had in online quiz. Not exactly the same copy, but quite close, based on the same slides to prepare. So I assume that you took this quiz as a preparation. It is 5 attempts, and it is still open, I believe. It is open till midnight before exam day, so if you didn't take it, take it. And since it's 5 iterations, it makes sense to do it like study in between to see improvement and so on. It is exactly the same questions, just it's random order in the quiz. It does not add questions, it is just the sample. The same actual questions, not just sample. So this is, I highly encourage you to do. And practical part, it will be a problem with input and output page. There are 2 pages, like you need to do navigation between pages, it is a requirement. Input page and output page. Input page will have some inputs, like text input, radio button input, checkbox input, drop-down list input. So some inputs, but not all of them, obviously. I do not specify which. You can expect any, but it will not be a lot. To be 2, most 3, most likely just 2. And I don't specify which because I have one section, but some people will do it in class, some people do it in the testing center due to accommodation because of different time scale. Some people will do it in testing center because they were sick. And it will be different variants with different inputs. So for this reason, I'm not specifying exact inputs, but so be prepared to do any 2 or 3 of them. Okay? Like checkbox, switch, text input, drop-down list, radio buttons, but it will not be a lot. Data, it will be requirement that you use navigation system of Android. It will be requirement that you share data using common view model. So just use view model. There's no requirement in this case to do dependency injection. If you want to do it, fine. If you don't, it is still fine because it's not such a program where it is essential to make it work in order to do dependency injection. So for midterm, dependency injection is not a requirement because it is so simple program, it does not add much to it. Although if you do it, it's fine, but okay, it can be easily done without it. Like it is a style of paper, rock, or scissors program, essentially. Except paper, rock, or scissors has only radio button and puts nothing else, but in this case it has more. Okay. But navigation system is requirement using it. You will have more than 2 hours to do it because I will set it deadline 1:30, so it will be some grace period after that. So you can submit it after 1:30, but not later than 1:50 because 1:50 Dropbox is closing. This is it. So it will be officially due 1:30 because it's due officially 1:30 because I don't want to deal with issues like, oh, I was late half second and Dropbox closed. If person says me I'm late half second and Dropbox is closed, I will just reply, if Dropbox is closed, you're late more than 20 minutes. Okay. So for this reason, it's officially due at 1:30, but Dropbox is closing at 1:50. Right? Lesson is supposed to be over at 1:50 because another class can come, right? So this is, and when you return paper, theoretical part, you can start doing practical one. Theoretical part, everything is closed, it's just pencil, paper, whatever, or pen, whatever you like. But for practical part, it's you have access to internet, you have access to any documentation, books, if you want. What is explicitly not allowed is getting help from other people, sharing code between each other or sharing code with another person outside. Yes?
So can you use our assignments?
Yeah, sure. You can use your assignment. You can use your own. If you wrote it, you can do it. Any samples that you previously downloaded. One thing I want to warn you that although everything is open, it is far too late to start learning how to do it. Because learning takes time, and when we learn, we get lots of unexpected surprises. And dealing with unexpected stuff during it's playing with, it's essentially gambling at exam time, because it may work or may not work, right? If you do it first time. So for this reason, I highly encourage you to practice, make problem yourself with different inputs. Put all of them that you can, so you can, if you want, you can copy paste it from this code later. So you do this. What is also not allowed is to ask code generation system to do it for you. It will not, most likely it won't even work, because it will be, most likely it will be code that just that could make sense to code generator, but it actually doesn't make sense to compiler. It happens quite often. So don't. So it is explicitly cheating. If you ask code generator to do a problem like explicitly in words, do that. If you type code and Android Studio suggests you, definitely you can agree, but do not do it blindly, because sometimes it is just suggesting something really strange that base it on somebody else typed similar code elsewhere, and this suggestion will not even work with your code. This is what I realized sometimes. So it may definitely don't agree to this blindly when you type it. Okay. So this is about exam. Hopefully this information is useful. Yes?
Will it be screen recording and sharing our recording with you?
No. I will not ask you to do screen recording because of technological issue. Android Studio requires lots of resources when it is building projects, and any kind of recording software possibly can freeze. This is why I'm recording this lesson not on the laptop. I'm recording this on plugged device outside, so because I have freezing issue. Screen recording software is freezing when I compile Android programs. Since you are compiling Android programs, screen recording software likely to freeze. So for practical reasons, I do not require that. Okay. No, it's not like, it's not really a choice. Okay. And it is the reason why I record these lessons on external device, because when Android Studio hogs resources of the system to build Android program, screen recorder was freezing. So it is practically difficult to realize, to make it work. Okay, but it does not mean that it cannot be done in other courses, obviously, because other courses have different software, not Android Studio. Okay. Android Studio is extremely hungry for resources of laptop, and it is hogging it, and as a program suffer and may freeze. Yeah. Yeah. So this is explanation. Definitely, I will watch you. I will go around. So hopefully, nothing surprising happens. And I don't want to deal with issues, but if it happens, I will have to. So it's not like I will be too lazy to deal with issues. This is why I will ignore it. No, I won't. I won't. I just won't like to do it, but I will do it. Yeah. So this is overview of the exam. I do not provide specific sample code of inputs because we already had examples with different inputs. So just look up how to do it. You can prepare code as practice, like create 2 pages program with different inputs on one page, different outputs on the other page. It's fine. It's your code. Do it if it helps you. And it definitely helps as preparation, definitely. So this is a suggestion. We have programs with various inputs, so there's no point of me providing separate program with inputs, various inputs. So what is for today? For today, I plan to finish what is not finished. It's not a new topic, but explanation what was left from previous lesson. It definitely likely I will finish earlier. But since some of you probably if some of you didn't finish assignment yet, the latest day to submit it is tonight, Tuesday night. It is tonight, so really you need to do it, okay? Do not ignore not submitting anything. This is worst choice because even submitting started work will give you partial credit. But if you don't submit anything, you will not get even 2 points out of 10. But 20%, it's kind of almost always happens if the student started to do assignment. Okay. And sometimes students fail course because they miss 2% of the course, and 2 points on the midterm. On the exam, it's actually 2% because every assignment is 10%. So I highly encourage you to submit even partially worked code. But if you want to perfect already submitted code, you can resubmit it. I never apply penalty to assignments, but it's not official. I do not promise it, but it never happens. Okay. Why I cannot promise it? If I promise that it will likely mean that it's due today, not on Friday, not on Saturday. And if it's due on Saturday, it's due today, I don't want to deal with issues like I was late half a second and it was closed. If student claims that I was late half a second and Dropbox was closed, I will say you were late 3 days, not actually half a second. Okay, so this is the reason. So it's not promised that most likely it won't happen. Okay. So today we continue with loading data from web. At the previous lesson, I explained it. So I'm already in this topic. I'm not finishing this today. It will continue after break. So at the previous lesson, I explained my example that loads data that I put on cPanel. I put the data as a JSON file, and the trick is working because REST protocol that we use to retrieve JSON is partially compatible on HTTP, partially compatible with the HTTP protocol. Because REST protocol is built on top of that, so some things really identical, like sending GET requests. If we send GET request to HTTP server and address in the GET request is the content of the file, HTTP server will send content of the file. Okay? So this is why it's compatible. And if content of the file is JSON, you will get exactly the same response from server serving JSON, based on some database. So although it's not real server, it's just file on cPanel, and it is using GET request from REST protocol, that exactly the same request of HTTP protocol, it works. So for next lesson, after break, I will just post some code of a server. We can run it, and so we can have it like hands-on play of server and your server and program running on the same laptop, so we can see messages on the server as log messages, or I receive a request. Message in from emulator or send request. So actually hands-on experience with exchanging, so showing printouts of received request, send request, received request, send response, received request, send response, this kind of thing. So this is plan for beginning of the next lesson, at least, to have the same program with given server with small change and other modifications programs are sending requests and getting data from a server. So this is a plan that happens after. After this, we will need to deal with locally stored copy of the data received from web. So it's not end of it, because we'll need to cover this one, local copy of the data received from web. And also data storing the data. Data store is one of the ways, recommended way, to store user preferences. And API is different from Room, because Room it is for SQL tables, but this is not. So, and after this, we will slowly but surely start using Firebase. So what is assignment 4? Assignment 4 is definitely not Firebase. It will be some program receiving data from receiving data from web. Either I post JSON file or just provide link to host it somewhere. I will not deal with giving you server, so you will run it on your laptop. We will play with it, but it's not planned on assignment, because on assignment, I don't want to deal with students not knowing how to deal with this stuff, because it's some students just takes time. Okay, so what about assignment 3? Yeah, this is what I mean. Some data from a web and displayed. So, and essentially it is end of the previous lesson, this lesson, and beginning of week 8. Okay. For assignment 3. Firebase takes a while to explain, so I allocated a lot of weeks to it. Okay. So this is a plan. So what is left? In the previous lesson, I explained an example in details, where it is, in week 6. Where it is. PET data. This PET data, already mentioned, is sending request to cPanel, HTTP server on cPanel, and receives JSON data and displays it. What is actual difference between dealing with cPanel having a JSON file on it and data server? The drastic difference is that data server has more capabilities, obviously, than just file on cPanel. Which capabilities? First of all, immediately obvious, you cannot change the data if it is just file on HTTP server. You cannot do that. Okay? But if it is a server serving JSON content, you can send post requests to add data. You can send put requests to replace data. You can send patch requests to change data partially. So you can send delete requests to delete data. So server has more data server has more capabilities, essentially. If it supports them, okay, you can, if you write server code that doesn't have this capability, of course it won't, okay? So definitely more capabilities, and also you have more ways to access it. If it is just JSON files that contains a list of objects like cat, dog, blah, 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 not objects, pets, you can get content of the file at once, but not each of them separately. You can retrieve them separate data after receiving the entire list. So you don't have access to items of the list separately. If it is data server, each of them can have different web address, like pet/ID. So this will be a address of the data of particular pet. So more capabilities, so this is a difference. Also, if you have more capabilities, you also have various ways of authentication at the server, because if it is required to be able to change data on the server, you need to authenticate yourself somehow, right? So only specific people are allowed to change, not everyone. Data, not everyone on web. So definitely it has more stuff. And these I explain it in details and recorded in Thursday video. I'm not returning to it. I will return to this example when we deal with creating local copy. So this is a local copy of the data stored, and it will be next lesson after break. But what is today? I already mentioned example from Google, Google tutorial course, that display images from Mars. Not from Mars, yes, Mars images, but of course it's not getting it from Mars directly. It is from a server storing images. So what does it do? It is doing similar to, approach similar to pet data. It retrieves a JSON that has names of addresses of the images, or names of the images, and it grabs images from another server and displays it on the screen. So it is similar to PET, but data is more simple. It has only a list of addresses of the images in it. And every item on the list also has ID, but it's the only thing. Okay. Also, that example has only one page for simplicity, displaying the grid, the list not as a grid, as a list as I did, but it is displaying this as grid. You're already familiar with grids from mass trainer example. On Thursday lesson, I also included grid in it. So in the beginning of the lesson, I showed that some larger screens show two columns, essentially. Okay. So this is where I added this. And in mass trainer, there is a two column by default, but it's actually a not specified number of columns, so it is limited by width of the screen, how many fits it will do. So it has, the grid has an option to choose like whatever fits, just try to do it. So it's possible to have such option. So this is what it does, if I remember correctly. Okay. So let's, that program also is not using HILT. And it is the reason why I explain it both, you writing programs with using HILT and not using HILT, but I'm sticking to using HILT. I explain it programs that do not use HILT, so you understand the code provided by Google. I do not recommend writing code this way because Google itself does not recommend writing code this way. If we open architecture guides explicitly recommended ways to use HILT. Most likely they provide this code in this introductory course without HILT because they didn't want to deal with everything at once. So they do kind of step-by-step approach, but they never do second step in this course. There are other examples from HILT, from Git, Google, that definitely use HILT. So it's not like my annoyance. Also, when we switch to Firebase, example provided by Google for Firebase is using HILT. So I explained this earlier, so it's not like a shock when we have to deal with mob theory and we also have to deal with HILT at the same time. All right? So this is my motivation. Where this Mars program is coming from, it is coming from the course six. Why do I have introduction to? This is slides, okay. From this course, is this link connect to internet? So let me think for a moment if I'm missing anything. I'm missing one piece. Before we go into that, I keep forgetting about this. I posted link in week 6 a new textbook for Android development. I never commented on that. This is not new textbook. Although I said new, it is nearly new, but it's not new. It is a new edition of previous textbook that was running through several years in several editions. So it's a new edition of books that existed long before. And it is new in the sense that previous edition was using old GUI, object-oriented GUI. And had only a short introduction to Compose. In the end of it, but most of it was just old GUI. So they changed it a lot because they introduced Compose directly in this book and dived into details of it. It became available quite recently. When we started the course, it was unreadable because release date was September, and we started in September, so they released a preview option. And preview option was missing chapters, and some chapters that were provided was unreadable because of text overlapping text and text overlapping images. So broken formatting. So now it is readable, it is useful, but unfortunately it's not covering everything in this course. So it is useful to look at, but it is not comprehensive in terms of what we need to learn. It definitely contains stuff that we do not cover, so looking through is useful. But it's quite small in terms of covered information. But it does contain stuff that we didn't cover because overlap is not exact. So it is useful. Yeah. What is interesting in this book remember that I mentioned that navigation system is how it is explained in Google course, introductory Google course, is using strings to define destinations of the navigation. So this is how introductory Google course is explaining it. This is how I'm sticking to it. This is how I explain this to you. This textbook calls it legacy approach. It means not really current, okay, legacy. And it says that modern approach is to use serializable objects to define destinations. This is not the first time when I hear it, because Firebase example that I'm referring to is using the same approach. And the code was released quite recently. It was released this year, in the beginning of the year. So author of the code rewrote it previous version into version 2. It was version 1 and version 2. And she switched it from using destinations defined as strings to destinations defined as serializable objects. The problem is that current Google course does not even mention it. This textbook explains it, cool. It means that we need to learn both, because the Firebase example that I want to use is actually using this approach. So I will explain both. And also, we probably need to know both because there are lots of code that is using strings as destination, and very few examples that use serializable objects in this moment. So we need to understand both, essentially. So this is what I immediately noticed. Another thing that it is doing, but I'm not going to do it. Remember that I mentioned storing user preferences. Our current approach to store user preferences is to use data. 1 second. Sorry, I forgot the word. Okay, I was using it, but I forgot the word. So okay, let me look up. I draw this word, drop it from my memory. So is to use data store. Is to use data store. Okay, and Google course that I'm referring to is using data store. And they also have a video explaining that data store is far better option than previously established one, and that was used storing data in XML files. It was automatic most of the time, but approach was essentially broken, so they decided not to fix it. They maintain it for compatibility with already existing code, but they decided not to continue that approach because idea was broken. It didn't support concurrent programming directly, and since concurrent means tasks are done at the same time by different parts of the code, so there's no support for that. So essentially, it was asking for trouble. So they decided to switch out of it. But the textbook that I mentioned, it is explaining older approach and new one at the same time. I want to just skip older one because it takes time, and in favor of just explaining new and more other features. Okay? So if you want to look up previous way, it is definitely that textbook is explaining how it was current approach when we use the XML files to store user preferences. Okay. You don't have to edit it directly because there is API to do it. But I have additional information from Google in the course directly I'm referring to, like in videos, that approach is bad, it's broken, don't use it unless you really have to maintain existing code, so this is why you may consider doing it. Okay, so we will use just data store, we will not use XML files for it. So I will return to this discussion. So that textbook covers both. So it's also useful in that information, at least to know how it was done for general information. All right? It's not this one. Definitely it is in week 6. New textbook for Android development. By the way, this is a link to websites that requires login. How to log in? You type your Sheridan email as login name, and after this, it will ask you, do you want to log in something like through Sheridan? Or you say yes, and it will bring up your Sheridan login, and it's free for you. So, okay. So, you see, I didn't sign in. When I go sign in, if I type Sheridan email, so they know that Sheridan.ca, they have an agreement with Sheridan or Sheridan library. And when I say continue, it will give me option. You see, I'm with Sheridan College, sign in with Sheridan. Okay. If you try to log in with your personal email, it will say, yeah, you have to pay for it. Okay. So this is how it really works. Access, you have free access to anything there, but you have to type your Sheridan email to get it. Hopefully it's useful. It is very useful. So let's click here, connect to internet. And they have several labs related to the same code. First labs are just, okay, let's send request, receive data, but the data is a string, so let's see the string on the screen. So it's not processed string. So they do incrementally it. It's not difficult to repeat the steps because they tell you exactly what to copy-paste. You can consider doing it, but I will not do it in class, obviously. It takes time. What I will do is to just get the last code and explain it, hopefully in enough details to be clear with it. What I will not do is to change libraries to the arrangement, which is new arrangement with 3 files with aliases. And what they have is they have just directly library names, type it in quotes. I do have a version of it with already changed it, because I was doing this for a while, just changing their codes to new format, and last summer, not this summer, but summer before, I changed this to new Android Studio. So it was looking like it was done with Android Studio. New Android Studio, I also changed this to using Herd. So such thing exists. It's on GitHub. I decided, okay, I will give up on doing it because it's extra work. Right? So I'm going here to the last. They explain basic idea, and I'm going to this load the images from internet, but it contains loading data referring to images. So it's not just loading images. Take Code Lab. They provide explanation. They explain what is lazy vertical grid. I had a demo last time, and we will see this again. And I'm going to get solution code number 7. So from the get solution code, I'm copying address. And now I will go to Android Studio, and I will paste this address. And we will see what is inside. I will not run update because it probably takes a while. So clone repository, paste, okay, and clone. I suggest you to update it, but not during class, but not right now, okay? Because when they update emulator, they fix bugs. Okay. A Trust project. It will want to update Android Gradle plugin into the project. It means it needs to parse the code and verify that existing code is working with new one and make some changes. This step is long, so let's don't do it. And also, this step is likely, not likely. Sometimes it breaks code. Because when you go from one version to another version, it's not always automatic, and sometimes it makes it not compilable. So this is what I will not do now. You're welcome to experiment it, but later. If you want this dialog again, you go to Tools, AGP Upgrade Assistant. That is the same as clicking on that button. So what do we see in here? We don't have TOMML file that contains a definition of aliases and version numbers. We have version numbers directly in Gradle files. You see version here. And there is no version here, but there are versions here. Okay? And also, they are not aliases, they're directly names of the libraries and codes. If you want to convert this code to new format, you're welcome. How it works? How did I do? It's not impossible. You don't have to create project from scratch and copy-paste code, although that works. Okay? If you create project from scratch and carefully do copy-pasting, it will also work. Okay. How did I convert it? I created a separate project and just copy-pasted TOMML file from it, nothing else. And clicked synchronize, and some of it started to suggest some of those things. Started to suggest, do you want to convert this line into a new format? I said, yeah. So I move on top, and it says, do you want to convert? You say, yeah. So it was partially converted this way. It didn't work for this. It didn't suggest. So I just copy-pasted it from the project that already had it. And after this, I had to close Android Studio and open it again, because it freaked out, it didn't work. But when I closed it, Android Studio, and I opened it again, it started to work with the project that I converted this way. So this is how I was dealing with it. So if you're really into making conversion of all the code into new code this way, it will work. But of course, I cannot guarantee that it will work all the time, because who knows? So let's see what we have here. In global file, we have serialization plugin because they use serialization library to convert received strings into Kotlin objects. Compose plugin, it is the same as before. Previously, it wasn't compose plugin. They changed this at some point. So older code do not have compose plugin. It was done differently. It was option in the compiler to use compose, not plugin option. This is the same. When we go here, we will see that in the current code it's 11. So when you create project from scratch, it will be 11. This is definitely older format. They use view model compose to use view models because they don't use hilt. If you use hilt, it's better just to use view model hilt because it comes with it. What is the difference? If you use hilt view model, it creates view models per destination if you call this function in the destination object, right? Destination screen, not global one. These will create global view models. So if you navigate between screens, they will still around. So it is different behavior under the hood. In your midterm, just use this one. This is what you want. You want the one that is always present. Okay. They added Kotlin X serialization converter, retrofit, Kotlin X serialization JSON. Exactly the same files that I used for my pet example. I explained it at the previous lesson. Why? Because I wanted to stay compatible with the code. Previously, pet example, it was using different libraries. I switched it just before previous lesson. So it is the same libraries. This coil library is to retrieve data from, retrieve images from web and display them. This coil library includes one piece that is surprisingly required to convert JSON. If you don't include Kotlin, a coil library, which is specifically to retrieve images, you need to include library, another library. I discussed this last time, and this is surprising, but it may catch you eventually. So let me show this part. Mars Photos application, UI. No, maybe it's here. No. Mars Photo. APP container. This two media file type extension function, this one, is imported here, OKHTTP3. But this OKHTTP3 library is not explicitly included into libraries of build Gradle because it is included in coil. If you do not include coil, this code, for example, you want to make a code that is not displaying images from web. This approach will not work because you need to include this library separately. And after this, it will start working. I ran it into this issue when I explained an example without images. Loading data from web, but not displaying images from web. I had to include that library separately. OKHTTP3 library. Okay, so let's run it and see what it does. After this, dive into code and explanations. Definitely, you probably noticed there's no navigation library because it has only one page. And there's no hilt here. Okay. You see loading images, loading kind of placeholder. They use the same library as before, as I use. I just didn't copy-paste that image to show when library is loading images. They use additional option, and when you use this option, you need to copy-paste this image to show before actual image comes. So their code to display images uses more options than I did. In this code, they retrieve a list of the data at once, so it's not loaded as we scroll. But images are loaded as we scroll. And that loading images as we scroll is done internally by COIL library. We don't need to write extra code. But loading data as we scroll is a separate topic. It's not in this code, and we will cover it. It's also interesting, but it's definitely extra complexity. So although it appears like it's loading stuff when we scroll, you see, it's loading only images when we scroll. It already retrieved JSON files at the beginning. And this loading images as we scroll is done automatically by COIL library. We don't have to write separate code for it. So definitely they have more images than I did. I don't have the option to scroll even there. Or it is scrollable, but I had only 6 pads or whatever. So in the resources, in the drawable, so they have an option. This is image to display when it couldn't retrieve the image, connection arrow to what to display when arrow happens, and loading what to display in the process of loading. So they use these images statically from the project as additional options to COIL library. My pet example didn't have it. I was lazy to add them. Perhaps I should, but I just didn't. I wanted to just to go simplest way possible. So this is why I don't have the extra options in my code. But it's good to know they exist. Right? And how to use it, just open code and see what parameters they use. Definitely you need to copy paste it or find something equivalent and put it there. Also, we see that it is 2 columns. Most likely it will be more columns if we rotate. So let's try to rotate. Because this code does not have, more columns. So this code does not have a specified number of columns. It's using option for grid, like fit essentially means fit as many as you can to the screen. So this is what it does. So let's rotate it back. Okay. Now let's dive into code. It is using dependency injection, but not with hilt. In both cases, we need, if we use it reasonably properly, we have to create application class, extending application. In the hilt option, it will be empty with annotation on the top, like hilt up or something. But if it is manual dependency injection, it is just application class which is doing something on create. Okay. What is doing something on the create is creating initializing objects that we need and linking them together. Okay. Where does it store these objects? So they created container class that will contain these objects. So this is the brute force approach that they do. In the application class, or in the onCreate, they create container by calling constructor, and initialization of those objects and linking objects together is done in that container. So brute force. When you would use application class, either with HILT or without HILT, we must mention this in my Android manifest, otherwise your program will crash when it starts. So this is essential. Okay. So let's continue with this logic. And so in application class, they are creating container. So let's see what is inside of that container. This is definition of interface, what we expect inside photo repository, what is expected in that interface. And default app container, they call constructor directly because it's brute force approach. We have implementation of this interface, but other things are extra. Interface it is requirement, other things make just extra, okay? For internal logic. So base URL. So it is getting data from that address plus extra thing, possibly, and which possibly thing is defined in API. So they have Mars API service. So it is that address / photos. Please notice it's not photos.json. Okay, just that address / photos. Most likely it is real server, or they just didn't put extension to the file there. Put there. So it means if we go to that address / photos, we will see the data. So let's try. So Mars app container, I'm copying this address into browser, and I will add / photos and see what is there. Okay. If it doesn't look nice for you, you need to add a plugin into browser to display JSON. Because if you don't, it will look like that, which is okay, probably. But it really depends on the server in what format it sends. Because sometimes servers do not care about formatting it. It really depends what software you use in order to write the server, because people just don't do it manually. If a library does not format it, people just ignore it. So it may come as one long line. And if it comes as one long line, you better use plugin to display it nicely. Otherwise, it is one long line. It's hard to see what is there. This way, you can wrap it and see that this is just one object, which is array. So structure of the data is slightly simpler than what I use it. I use it not for the purpose of confusion. I showed that potentially data can be complicated, so I created object with with one field referring to array. Okay? They don't have this case. They have just array as one object. So it is simpler. Most likely, you will not have such simple data if you deal with real server. It will be lots of stuff in it. So they have just ID and this. It has extra features that my code doesn't have. When we create an object, out of it, automatically, these will be data fields inside of that object. And this definitely is not following to naming convention. It has underscore in it. A good naming convention for properties is to have a camel case. So they need some conversion, automatic conversion, to tell the system, please create me object, but please do not do underscore image, blah, 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 this kind of thing. And it is, yes. And when we do so, we need to provide extra parameters. Not extra parameters, extra information. So when they, in the definition here of network, Mars footer, it is the same as my code, but it has extra information that for the field image underscore source, use this variable. Okay. My code doesn't have it because I created my JSON file, so I type it as I wanted it. Okay. So this is definitely extra information how to deal with it. It could be even worse because this is still nice variable name. Okay, not nice, but variable name. But what if it contains space? It's allowed in JSON. But if it contains space, you cannot really have a variable with space in it. Right? So in this case, you really have to do some conversion. So in some cases, it's unavoidable to convert. And these are exact addresses of those images. If you click on it, you see it shows. So it is not like in my example, folder name and image name separately. So it is more direct. Okay, let's go to this part. APP container, so this is address. So similarly to what I did, they need retrofit object in order to create API. Because API, implementation of the API, because in the implementation of, you need to call a method create of retrofit in order to implement given API. So they create retrofit object. They provide converter factory using serialization. So this you cannot do this one unless you include serialization. JSON serialization. Base URL is this one built, so they have retrofit object. Next. They create implementation of API. API is defined as interface. It is the same as before. In the previous example, it is we describe what we want. And return type has to be reasonably understandable. They define it Mars footer as serializable object, right? Serializable object, and system knows how to deal with the list. So return type is list of Mars footer objects. In my example, I created two to show how to deal with more than one, essentially. So it was my motivation why I created one object and included list inside of it for other things. So it's it's a demonstration purpose. There is no .json because address does not contain .json. If you put file on the server, it's name of the file essentially, .json. I saw addresses on the server that contain .json, but it's actually generated data. So if you see .json, it's not doesn't really mean that it's file. It's not necessarily file. Okay. It's essentially choice of the developer of the server how to define address. It's a string essentially. So going back, will create implementation of the interface. It means we have a real method to call. Okay. And Mars repository needs implementation of that interface in order to implement functionality. So they call network Mars photo repository directly, constructor directly with the parameter retrofit service. So it is brute force. What lazy means? Lazy means execute this code when you access this variable and assign to it. Okay, so when we refer to a repository, it will create it, essentially. Retrofit service, network Mars repository is this one. So when we refer to this field in the container, it will create repository. Please notice that there is no separate file here for what is called factory. If you look up previous code where I use it with brute force dependency injection, it is for a stack demo. We had a factory there. And also, if you refer to the code for inventorization service, inventorization, not server, inventorization example, they also had separate file for repositories. In this particular example, they use different approach that I didn't see in any other examples in this course. Why they use it separately? Perhaps just to show it's possible. So they do have factory, but this factory is included in the code of repository itself. So not repository, in the code of view model itself. So they do have view model factory, but is in the view model code. It is inside of companion object. So if we open view model, where is the view model? Screens, maybe. Yes, Mars view model. Companion object contains factory. So in order to get factory, we call view model name dot factory. This will be factory object. Okay. In the other code, we had this piece inside of an object, call it differently, essentially. I think it will just call it directly view model factory something. In this code, they decided just, okay, let's do not copy paste it into a separate object, in separate file. Let's use companion object for it as a wrapper. I didn't see it in other examples, just probably it's just, why not, but they don't use it again. Right, so this is it. Now let's see what we have here. Since it's logical thing, I ended with this part. Now let's look inside of view model how they use it. So in the view model file, we saw factory. We saw factory, and this factory is used explicitly by view model function. When we use Hilt dependency injection, we do not mention factories because factories are created automatically, and Hilt knows how to deal with factories created automatically by Hilt. Okay. In this case, we mention this factory directly to view model function. And view model function will use this factory to create view model when view model doesn't exist, and if it exists, it will pick existing one. So it has an option to store it somewhere. So factory is given as a parameter to view model function in a GUI. We will look into view model code immediately after that when we find it. So let's see. Mars photos app. This is one thing that is potential confusion, and this is why I'm avoiding it. You see, Mars photos application and Mars photos app. This is what I don't like. See, Mars photos application, Mars photos app. Essentially, it means like the same thing, right? But totally different purpose. This is why in my code I call this file root screen, app root screen. Because what it is, it's actually root screen. It is everything on the screen. Okay, root. And other things are inside of it, right? But I call this root screen. But this is a class necessary for dependency injection, which is extending application class. So in my examples, it's called app root screen. Mars photos app is mentioned inside of activity. You see, for activity, you have a theme surface in Mars photos app. Just because this project was created by older Android Studio was creating surface here. Newer Android Studio is using what's it called, scaffold instead of surface. When you create the project, it will be scaffold here. It is just old Android Studio that was doing it. It's nothing smart about it. It's just different approach, older approach. Mars Photos app is inserted inside of onCreate function of main activity. So Mars Photos app here, always enter always on scroll. It means it disappears on scroll. There is option when it doesn't disappear. This option, you can look it up in my example for different screen sizes. For the version on different screen sizes, in some cases, I made it explicitly not to disappear because it looks ugly when it does. So it really depends on what you need. Okay, you can experiment. Pin at scroll bar means do not disappear, essentially. Next, it's scroll in order to connect them together, and home screen. There is no navigation, and you see they call from view model, and they provide view model factor explicitly. So this is where it enters to GUI. How view model is linked to GUI, it is exactly at this place. Next, let's go back to view model and see what is inside. Okay. This constructor for view model requires one parameter, which is repository. We saw that it is given directly inside of the constructor of container class. Right? Inside of the container class. What is this? This is the state. In this particular example and in some other examples, state is not defined as a separate file, not defined inside of a separate file. They combine its state inside of view model file. So view model is not just view model class, it's also state class together. I saw this approach in many examples of Google, so it is quite common for Google to do that. In some examples, they're separate. So I keep it separate just for easy find. But in many Google examples, they're in the same file. And you see that state is either success, error, and loading. So I copied this approach into pet example. It starts with loading. If it comes, it is success. If it doesn't come, it becomes error. And success just contains a list of Mars Photo objects. Please notice there is a difference between pet example and this example, that they don't have a conversion between data received and data displayed. In the example for pet, I have received data defined as remote pet, and data displayed defined as pet class. So they're two different classes, so I needed conversion. I could avoid that by just using one class, but I didn't. Because in many cases, what you receive is not what you want to display or store it in database. So it was in the pet that extra complexity it's a feature of explanation. So it's not a bug, it's a feature. Use it to explain concept of converting and how to do conversion inside of that. It should be done inside of repository. So definitely their code is somewhat simpler because they don't need to convert. They have exactly the same class. So init, it's a part of the constructor, primary constructor. So when we call constructor of view model, it will call get Mars photos. So right away, and what happens in get Mars photos? They launch coroutine, task in coroutine context, to execute this retrieving the data as concurrent task. So concurrent task means running at the same time with GUI task. So it's not freezing, hogging GUI threads to execute the retrieval of the data. All right? So what happens when we launch? It is changing state to loading because initial state was mutable state of loading. Please notice they're not using stateful. They use just state. Just because I copied their code. I decided to use just state. So it's a kind of trying to stay compatible with their code. Later we will use stateflow because we need to link to database. And if we use database, stateflow is simpler. Why do we need to link to database? Because if we want to maintain local copy, we need to access database. If we use database for local copy. Okay? So in that case, I will switch to stateflow. But I started in pet example with state. So they use state, in this case, not stateflow. Mutable state off and start. Initial state is loading. Why do we need to switch to loading again? It looks like mysterious or just extra line of code, which is not necessary, but it is necessary. Because they use this function, get Mars photos, on arrow, because when arrow screen happens, it will be button try to reload. And when you click on that button, it calls this function, so it switch arrow screen to loading screen. So it is for that purpose. Because when you have a loading arrow, it will be button, try to reload, and when you try to reloading, arrow screen should disappear, and should show loading screen again. So it is for that purpose. So it's not a bug, it's a feature. And they call Mars UI state, it is what is returned by this try, and try can return value if value is last element of catch or this try block. So if Mars photos get Mars photos repository get Mars photos does not throw exception, return value of the try will be success with the data inside. Otherwise, it will be error object in it. So they deal with two kinds of errors. We can see those error screens if we turn on airplane mode in the emulator. It will not have access to internet, so it will be error screen. So this is how to see it. We can try. Oh no, we cannot. Because it doesn't have reload button, we need to stop it, and after this turn off internet access and start this program again. Because this program does not have reload button. So they didn't bother about reload button. Okay. I added reload button for demonstration purpose so we could see that screen, and at the previous lesson we saw it. In this case, you can see it if you just stop it and just turn off and see. So this is what they have in view model. So in APP, in Mars Photos APP, they initialize view model here. They could do it inside of home screen function or could do it as default parameters. All three approaches exist in Google examples. I'm not sure why they use three, just to different approaches, just to show it's possible, most likely, in my understanding. They're not consistent about where to initialize view model. Mars photos view model factory is given to view model, and they pass view model to home screen. But they didn't pass view model object directly. So view model's object stays here. They pass UI state. They pass what to be called on retry button, which is, as you see, get Mars photos. And they provide content padding. It is content padding is used for this column, not either column contained lazy column of this lazy screen. It is root object. It's used as padding for root object. So this top bar does not overlap content. So it will be extra padding added to the stuff, which is inserted under this top bar. So it doesn't overlap anything useful. So this is the current approach. So the rest is center assigned toolbar. It is this one, which is given to scaffold. See, center assigned toolbar. Top bar given to scaffold, so they call constructor, and they pass scroll behavior to it. There is no buttons on it, so there's no other behaviors passed as lambda function. Okay. So next is to see what is inside of home screen. So home screen. As in my example, because I copy-pasted, idea we have when, and we have options for the state. For the loading options, show loading screen. For the success, shows grid screen. So they have this is loading screen, grid screen within the same file. I have them in separate files. For arrow state, show arrow screen. So if you see that I did something strange, I didn't make it up, I copy-pasted the idea. Okay? It looks weird, but I'm not the one to blame. Okay? This came up from Google. Okay. So let's start from the top, loading screen. What does it have in it? In loading screen, they just have one image in it, nothing else. For arrow screen, they have a column that contains image, failure to load message, and retry button. This is what I mean. On click of this button, it is retry action. On retry action, we provided link to view model function, load images function, or something like load. And the most interesting part, it is this one, which is success. On success, photos grid screen. Photos grid screen, it is this one. We receive list of photo images, modifier for the and content padding. Content padding is added to modifier of lazy vertical grid. So this is not overlapping useful stuff. See content padding. Why? No, it is here. It is given to content padding, not to modifier, sorry. It's given to content padding, not modifier. They also add, am I right? I will have to see it. Okay. I forgot. Home screen, content padding. No, I think it is coming from modifier. So let's see. Okay. I lost this track. Okay. Mars photos, surface, home screen, content padding is coming from scaffold. So this is scaffold information. How do I know? If I do so, it disappears. Okay. What is wrong? Composable function. Surface. Okay, let's. If we use extra parameter, it will be it that related to padding. So it's default name of the function, default name of the parameter of lambda function. So they give it to content padding, and content padding goes into home screen as content padding. So this is not used. It's coming from, this is not used from this line because they received content padding from scaffold. So it is coming from scaffold, and it is in the home screen, also coming from scaffold. So content padding for this is coming from scaffold. And this is extra padding to it for DP to edit at the left and at the top in addition to overlap. So this is for DP. For DP, between scrolled stuff and top bar, this for DP and this for DP. And lazy vertical grid. They didn't specify number of columns directly. They say adaptive, it means how many is fit, would fit. And they specified minimal size for it, because for image it could be tiny. So that was the approach. And items, key is used for optimization. So when we scroll, it will update only things. So it is for optimization of the update, essentially. And they use ID for it. I didn't use key in my examples so far. And photos, it is iteratable, so it is one photo at a time from the photos, and it's a display Mars photo card. Mars photo card, it is separate function here. For the modifier, they add extra padding for it. Fill max size up to minimal, I believe. Otherwise, how would we do? And they've specified aspect ratio for that. Perhaps use it somewhere here. So Mars photo card contains card. Shape. It looks like it's default material times shape medium, because for the card it is medium. And card defaults, card elevation, so they added additional elevation to it. It's not obvious, but probably there is some shadow next to it. And I think image, it is part of the core library to get image from web. And as you see, they use more parameters than I did. I just used one parameter, which is web address of the image. They have fancy option to do it. They added what to show for broken image, what to show when it's loading, what to deal with things if it doesn't fit, so it's cropping it. If it's not the same proportion, so it's cropping it. Fill max size to cover entire card, so it goes to edges. I don't see anything else to explain. I think we went through entire code. So it is relatively straightforward, actually. Now we at midpoint of the course, not course, is course also, midpoint of the course, but I mean a midpoint of the class. Yeah? And I'm done with theory. I don't, for today, I don't want to explain anything new because it's right before midterm. So now we have a half of the lesson left. Consider having a break. Consider working on assignment. It's up to you. I will stay here. Okay. But now it's end for instructional part.